Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're doing a video that, well, we haven't done this concept in such a while. It's going to be a top 10 stars. Well, not stars yet. Hopefully they'll become stars one day. Top 10 players to break through in MLS this year. Obviously, Braden always does the best job out there scouting, so he has a list up for us, and I'm going to question him about some of these players as I'm not too familiar with some of them. But straight to the point, counting down backwards. In 10th position, the first player you're going to pick right here for us to all keep on watch this year. Braden, who is it? What position?
Yeah, this was a difficult list to make. A lot of good options, and just determining the criteria is tough as well. So definitely, if there's anyone that we don't mention that you think is going to have a breakout year, comment down below. We'll be more than happy to see who you think is going to be one of the breakout stars in MLS this season. Of course, young Americans only. All these players are 20 or younger at the time of recording. But for the first one, I have Darren Yapi at number 10, the striker from the Colorado Rapids. You guys might remember him from the USA U20 team in the World Cup. He was like the only real striker that was part of that roster. Wasn't really that great there, to be honest. We ended up playing with a false nine anyway. But this past season, he kind of came into his own a little bit. He played in 38 games for the Rapids, scored 3 goals, got an assist. The reason I'm picking him as a breakout because he is kind of an established MLS backup already. I think they're going to trust him more. I think the minutes count is going to go up by a lot. He's going to surpass 1,000 hopefully, and ultimately we just need the end product to go up a little bit more. I mean, 3 goals across 38 games. Yeah, the minutes were not a lot, but it's not a great output. Now he's 20 years old. This is his season to finally break out, maybe even challenge for a starting spot. I don't think he's anywhere close to as good as their starting striker, but maybe push a formation change, something like that. Just prove his worth. And I think he showed a lot of decent moments in flashes last season, and the talent is there. So hopefully this comes true, but that's my number 10.
I will say I'm not a big fan of Navarro, who's the starter either. So I'm gonna ask you this before we move on to the next one. Where do you see his ceiling as a player? Not to knock the guy down if it isn't too high, but do you think he'll ever realistically be involved with the USMNT or Gold Squad level? Curious to see.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a USMNT level player if we're being realistic. I mean, the striker pool now, all of our guys are so young, and even like 1 or 2 years above him, and they're so much clearer. And the incoming generations, but Gold Cup, maybe. I think hopefully he can become a solid MLS player, and I think that's a reasonable ceiling for him. Maybe someone like this is going to sound bad to say, but if he could become Brian White, where he's scoring 15 goals in MLS, I mean, that's a very good level to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully he does better than Rafael Navarro. That guy makes all of my friends think that MLS is a joke because he was a bit of a meme in Brazil at one point. But we'll move on to ninth place right here. Who do you have for us and what position?
Yeah, number 9 is an interesting one because he wasn't an MLS player until very recently. He was in USL with Birmingham Legion. It's going to be Matthew Corcoran. The CDM just signed for Nashville. He started in their final preseason match, which is always a good sign because it's the final tune-up. Nashville, they're kind of a mediocre club, mid-table of sorts. I don't think they're going to really accomplish too much this season. They had a pretty poor year last year, and I mean, under BJ Callahan, we know he likes to give what he can to the U.S. men's national team. Nashville's academy has, let's face it, been very poor since they started as a club. I mean, Corcoran's not even an academy product of theirs, but they're bringing him in. He's already their best prospect with the club by far. And I think he has a pretty reasonable path to minutes in the midfield. He's an immensely talented player. If he didn't get a huge long-term injury last season, he probably would be in Europe right now instead of in MLS with Nashville. Now's his time to prove his worth and hopefully claim a spot on the USA U20 World Cup squad later this year. That's what he's really fighting for at that position. And I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. Let some more people know who maybe don't watch USL what kind of talent he is, and hopefully end up in Europe at some point.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get minutes, right? Because they sold Godoy to San Diego FC for some whatever reason, signed that 35, 36 year old. But do you think that, well, how many games do you think he'll play in the season? You mentioned the minutes. How big of a role is he going to play? Because Nashville, like you said, the expectations are too high. So it's kind of a good environment for him to set the bar at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna walk in as a starter necessarily. I think that's kind of an unrealistic ask, moving up that level. But I do think by the end of this season he will end up being a starter. I don't know what the minutes spread looks like from that, but I just think that Nashville overall as a club are not going to have a lot to play for towards the end of the season, and you would hope that that means that they play their young guys. He's really the only one who's ready to be first team level. Up until then, I think he'll get spot starts here, be a rotation player, but I have faith that at the end of the season he'll be a starter.
Well, that's a good expectation. If he is a starter by the end of the season, I think that's a success. I'm curious to see if that will be the case for the next pick, number 8 on the list.
Yeah, next up at number 8 is a player who is kind of in a weird spot. It's going to be Alex Freeman from Orlando City. He's towards the older side. Him and Darren Yapi are the only 204s on this list. Everyone else is U20 eligible. I had to include him here because he's just such a talented player at right back. And even in the very limited MLS minutes he got, he only played 3 games for Orlando City's first team last season. He got an assist in those minutes. He's got 8 goals, 9 assists from right back in MLS Next Pro from their B team, which you might say, yeah, I mean, he's a 20-year-old in MLS Next Pro. He should be producing, but from right back to tally those kind of numbers, he could do whatever he wanted in that league, and it was very evident he was so far past level, probably the best player in the league by the end of the year. And there's going to be openings now for Orlando City. They're trying to prioritize the academy a little bit more. They've even had some players from the academy come up and train with the first team in preseason. Gustavo Caraballo being the big one, the 2008 born player. But I think Freeman's finally going to get his chance with the first team this season. And if he does get the chance, just an opportunity, he's going to take it. He has that kind of talent. It's just a matter of whether the coach is going to play him or not.
Yeah, it's always nice to see. I would be really happy if we see a pattern of defenders being produced in MLS. I think that's something that the league has been lacking in recent years, not only for the USMNT, but overall the level of defenders. So, yeah, hopefully he pans out this season. Now, number 7 on the list, getting close to that upper half.
Yeah, number 7 is actually a last minute change to the list. I didn't have him on here originally, but because we're recording this right after the Sporting Kansas City versus Inter Miami game in CONCACAF Champions Cup, I decided to include Jacob Bartlett, the CDM 19-year-old from Sporting Kansas City. I didn't expect him to really have too much of a role, or at least not worth being on the list, but he went the full 90 for them against Inter Miami, and one of the biggest games in their club's history, I think you can say. Being involved in the CONCACAF Champions Cup is no small feat, especially for a club who's as bad as Sporting Kansas City. I mean, if you just look at where they were last season in MLS, it's bad. And if you look at their preseason run, it was horrible. They lost to a college team, which is unprecedented levels of bad for an MLS franchise. Regardless, they're going to be horrible this year. Bartlett's a 19-year-old CDM who actually is from their academy, played 1 year in college last season. And I think he's ready to maybe not be a full-time starter, but get enough meaningful minutes that he could easily make this list and maybe even push into the USA U20 conversation, which I don't think anyone had him on that radar even a couple of weeks ago. So he's definitely an intriguing one that I'm going to keep an eye on.
Very intriguing. I had no idea who the guy was. I saw the lineups today, and I'm actually impressed. I didn't watch the game, but I'm impressed it was just 1-0. The Kansas are horrible, so maybe he can benefit from that. That can always help youngsters because the expectations are low and there's a lot of minutes to be played. So maybe that's good for him. I'll definitely keep a watch on him this year. Now, number 6.
Yeah, number 6 is going to be another USA U20 midfielder, one who's actually established with the team, one of the first names on the team sheet. It's going to be Brooklyn Rains. Honestly, I think that it's very possible that Bartlett plays more than Rains, but I have Rains higher up because I think he's a better prospect. I think he's obviously more well-known as a USA U20 regular, and ultimately, if he does get enough time, I think he's going to have an impact with the Dynamo. He played 20 matches for them last season, not a lot of minutes. He didn't even crack 500 within MLS. This is really his season to break out, and it's a crucial year for him, obviously, with it being a World Cup year, his last year being eligible for U.S. youth national teams, really, until the Olympics in 2028. And let's be honest, I don't think he's making the Olympic squad in 2028. He has a point to prove now. This is the time where really you have to start breaking out in MLS if you want to become something. So I think he's going to grab this opportunity. He has enough talent. I think we all know that. Watching him with the U.S. U20s, it's evident he's one of the best midfielders within the group. It's just a matter of Houston actually trusting him, giving him those minutes. I will say he did kind of start the year as a starter for them last season and kind of lost the spot. Hopefully he's grown from that and can learn from his mistakes. Adding Jack McGlynn definitely isn't going to help for his chances, but he's a different kind of player. Hopefully he can establish himself a little bit towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm surprised there wasn't a move sought after that, because McGlynn's definitely going to not make his life easier in terms of minutes. Hopefully he fights for those, but yeah, I think it'll be tough. I expected him to break through last season. I think it's make it or break it at this point, really, for him if he wants to be part of that picture. So moving on right here, first one on the top 5.
Yeah, first one on the top 5 is going to be the youngest player on the list so far, Julian Hall, 2008 USA U17 International. I think it was pretty obvious he was going to be on this list. He even played in MLS last season, 12 matches for New York Red Bulls. Now the minutes were very bad, only 150 in MLS, I think under 250 in all competitions. But at the end of the day, for a 16-year-old now, that's incredible to even be playing at this level. He even scored 2 goals and got an assist in 150 MLS minutes. That's really good production off the bench. This is his season to break out and not be a starter. I think that's an unrealistic ask, but be a key rotational player for the New York Red Bulls. They did just sell Dante Vanzier, who was one of their main strikers, so the spot is open for him to come in and compete for minutes. They bought a striker as well, but from the second division of Poland, Julian Hall, interestingly, being Polish, of Polish descent himself, I think he can beat him out and at least be number 2, maybe number 3. But I think he's going to get a lot of minutes. This is going to be his true breakout. He's going to announce himself to the world, and maybe some of those reports saying that Barcelona were going to spend 10 million on him, maybe it'll come to fruition after the season. Who knows?
Yeah, I would just choose to not believe in that rumor, because whenever those big clubs are rumored with our players, it never seems to help the player or the club even. So I'll just leave it aside. But yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. He was very impressive when he came on last season at those minutes, very urgent. So yeah, I think everyone had this one on their list if they ever made one, or if they were to be asked to do one in 5 minutes. I think he would be on their list. I'm actually surprised he's in 5th, so I'm curious to see who's up next in 4th.
Yeah, number 4, I think, is probably the most established MLS player of these guys. Nico Shakiris, the USA U20 captain at the CONCACAF Championship over the summer. One of the only players who actually had a decent performance at that tournament, for what it's worth. And he's, very established as a starter for the Earthquakes. At least he was last season. It'll be interesting to see what they do this year with a lot of a new squad, big overhaul, and a new manager as well in Bruce Arena. But he did have 19 starts, and honestly, I debated even including him, because you could argue maybe he already has broken out. I just don't think he was that great, and I think he can reach a full new level. He was also playing kind of out of position as more of a 6 or an 8. He's more of a 10, and he only had 2 assists, no goals in those 19 starts in MLS, and even in all competitions as well. One of his 2 assists was in the Open Cup, so how much stock can you really put in that against lower level opposition? I just think that this is his season to shine if he does get the minutes, and he should, because with a new manager, with a new squad, the Earthquakes still suck. They're still probably going to be the worst team in MLS, or at least one of the bottom teams. There's no excuse really for them to not play him at all. He's probably the most exciting talent that's first team ready that they have right now. So I expect him to improve on those 19 starts, get upwards of 20, and hopefully just add some goals and assists to his game, because the end product wasn't really there. It was a little bit of nothing stats last season. So hopefully he can just improve on the output.
Yeah, to his defense, I will say I think the entire squad from the Earthquakes was a little bit out of position. They looked out of position in every type of play. So hopefully that's going to improve this year. Like you said, complete overhaul. So I'm actually curious to see if Bruce Arena will give him the minutes, trust him. He's still very young. But yeah, he was really good in that tournament in his age group, but it doesn't matter. It matters how you do against the pros. And I think he has sort of established. And if he keeps his spot as a starter this season, hopefully things will be better. I mean, it surely can't get any worse. So I'll definitely be tuning in to watch him. He raised this stock, in my opinion, over the summer. So now starting the top 3, who's the next guy?
Yeah, and another pretty established MLS player here at number three, Reed Baker Whiting, another USA U20 international, versatile fullback, can even play left mid or left wing in a pinch for the Seattle Sounders, 19 years old, and he is also kind of established, not as much so as a starter as Shakiris was, but he did get almost 1,000 minutes within MLS last season, played 31 matches for the Sounders, and it was his second year of being a full part of the first team. I just think there's room to grow for him. I think that if you look at the game, maybe this is just being reactionary, but the game that Nuhu had, their current left back, against Antigua Guatemala, a very poor side in CONCACAF Champions Cup today. I think he was at fault for the goal, and he's probably more on the decline. He's been a great player for them, don't get me wrong, but I think there are minutes to be won for Reed Baker Whiting, whether it's at left back, at right back, even filling in as a wing back, maybe, regardless of what position, what formation they play. I think there's a spot that he can earn there, and that's what I'm looking to see from him this season. Just establish himself as a full-time starter. Being versatile can sometimes hurt that because you have to lock down one spot. It's good for being a rotation guy because you always get minutes off the bench, like he has the past 2 seasons, but now he has to pick one spot, make it his own, and I think he has the talent to do that. He's one of the top players in the U20 pool, especially at the fullback position, so I have faith that he can do it, and doing that for one of the best teams in MLS in Seattle should be acknowledged, because it's great being a player for the Earthquakes or Sporting Kansas City who can start. Doing it for a team that's actually competing to win trophies, it means something more.
Yeah, and he's going to get tested. I hope he gets tested against some of the best clubs in the world, really, because they got into that very nice, sweet group of Botafogo, Atletico Madrid, and PSG. So hopefully, I mean, that there is a chance for him to maybe attract some eyes from abroad if he does well in those matches. You never know. So, yeah, very good player, very solid fullback. I really like him. He's high on my list as well. Second place for us. Who's the runner-up?
Yeah, coming in at number two is going to be actually another fullback like Reed Baker Whiting, another player who's played with the USA U20s despite being only 17 years old. He burst onto the scene in MLS last season for another bottom feeder club. Peyton Miller, New England Revolution, left back, for some reason plays winger with the U20s. No one will ever understand why, but he had 13 appearances for the Revolution, 10 in MLS, 3 in this friendly tournament they made up with Liga MX, so I'm not even going to justify it by saying the name of it. But he got 2 assists within MLS, very solid production, 684 minutes. I think this year is his time to become a full-time starter for the full season. He kind of made his way into the lineup, coming back from injury, yes, but mid-season for the Revolution, kind of kept his spot. 8 starts was pretty solid, but I'm looking to see more. I think even upwards of 20 would be realistic to expect from him. Again, the Revolution are not a good team. They have no incentive to not play. Their left back, who's number one in this position, he's the best prospect of the club, one of the best prospects within all of MLS. I'm expecting to see big things from him. It's not even looking at the output, although the goals and assists would be a nice bonus, especially the assists from a left back position. We know he's great at getting forward. I want to see more so the defensive side of the game. I think there's definitely improvement to be made there at the MLS level. He looked a little bit like maybe not necessarily ready in terms of that aspect last season. So I'd like to see improvement there. But overall, I just want to see consistent starts for one of the youngest players on this list.
Yeah, just before we move on to the top guy, do you think that I haven't really kept up with all of the transfers from the Revs? Do you think the guys around him will help him have a good season? Because I'll be honest, watching last season, I thought they were even worse than Chicago.
Yeah, no, they were bad, and I think that's definitely a fair question to ask. Their transfers have not impressed me too much. They did get Campagna, which was a big addition, 2 million from Inter Miami for MLS terms, considering that it wasn't even one of those new, what are they calling it, cash for player moves, where it's literally just a regular transfer. They apparently MLS is like 100 years behind the rest of the world. They just discovered what a real transfer is. It was a 2 million GAM deal, which is pretty significant. That's a lot of the allocation money that they're given. So that's definitely an ambitious move. They also signed a guy from Liga, Ganago, who's going to be a winger. They got him in on loan. I think maybe he could do something. Overall, it's going to be another bad year for them, realistically. And I think that could work out for the better for Peyton, because he's going to be probably one of their key players.
Yeah, and even if he makes a few mistakes here and there, it's not going to cost. It's not like they were going to do anything big anyway. So that's good for him. Still very young. That's so nice that he's getting so many minutes. Hopefully, he cements himself as a starter of the season. But that brings us to the number one, the most exciting player to break out in MLS this season. Surprises, Braden. Who is it?
Yeah, there's no surprises here. I think every single person, whether you watch MLS or not, could know who number one is. Kevin Sullivan, of course, 15-year-old from the Philadelphia Union, made his MLS debut last year, played a grand total of 9 minutes. But I will say, every time he came on 3 matches, 9 minutes, he made something happen. There was at least one moment in all three of those games where you can see the threat, whether it was making a long solo run against NYCFC and drawing a yellow card from one of the best left backs in the league in Kevin O'Toole, or getting shots on target, combining with his brother Quinn. This is going to be a big season for him. Obviously, there's the targets of getting his first MLS goal, getting his first MLS assist, maybe even his first MLS start. There's going to be so many milestones that he can hit this season, but ultimately it's just about being a key first team player as a rotation guy, as a guy coming off the bench late in games, impacting the match, which he can do so well. He's already proven it at the smallest of sample sizes. He proved it coming into the Union 2 team midseason last year and making an instant impact at that level. In terms of the talent, in terms of the potential, we all know he's ready. It's just about whether he can actually adapt. And the Union are probably not going to have a great season, as much as it pains me to say that, this year. So there's going to be opportunities, particularly late in the year, for these guys to play. And Carnell, the new coach, was brought in because the Ernst Tanner, the general manager, was not happy with Jim Curtin, the previous coach, for not playing the young guys. Kevin's going to get opportunities. He's going to impress. He's going to take them. And I think it's very clear that he's the number one young player to watch, maybe in the world, honestly, especially considering his age.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be biased here and say that, yeah, I think it's fair to say he's the most marketed guy at his age, really, in the world. And if he earned that, he earned that. It's not as if it was just made up. I mean, we saw everything that he did in MLS Next Pro. Everything has been happening for him so quick. So hopefully he has a great year. Like you said, with some of the other guys, the club not being at its best, I think kind of benefits him. So I'm excited to see how he does. Everyone is. And I'm going to ask you guys that are watching the video, please comment down below if you're going to be tuning in for these players, which ones stick out a little bit more for you, or you're going to be keeping a watch, or if you have a player in your club that we didn't mention here, I would be very happy to comment and respond to your guys' comments. So let us know in the comments below what you thought of the video. Suggest any content if you guys want to see that you don't see anywhere. We'll make sure to do it and tailor it to you guys. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.